Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Got the video that many of you have been waiting for. It's the final part of the Zoom interview I did, over 2 hours long, with Mark Levinson. But this is probably the most important part for a variety of reasons. Number one, it covers the topic that precipitated the entire interview to start. Just to give you some backdrop. Number one, I heard Daniel Hertz at Montreal, was impressed. Adrian gave a great presentation on it. A lot of scuttlebutt in the industry about it. A lot of things I could definitely sign off on. Active crossover, DSP, doing things like Mark Levinson's always done. Pioneer in the industry, take things forward. There was a claim, though, that I was reading about health benefits and negative things about PCM. And I was a little more skeptical of that. I don't just knee-jerk sign off on anything. So I read the patent that was actually signed off and got by Daniel Hertz. One thing about patents, a lot of people just assume because you get a patent, it's rubber stamped, it's golden, it's endorsing it. No, you have to understand how patents work and understand business law. It's fairly easy to get a patent as long as you show something that is unique and not so easy to do otherwise. And also some level of validation is there, but nowhere near a rubber stamping of what's in it. You spend enough money, you can get a patent in most cases. But this case, I read the patent with a very critical lens when it came to the health benefit side and wanted to understand the testing that was done to make this claim that, in short, you're going to hear him talk about the whole thing. I don't edit anything out because I want you to hear straight from his mouth, and I don't even jump in most of the time. But I wanted to give you a little synopsis of what I read that precipitated me analyzing it. Basically, what I understood was that a listener listening to no music had this level of health metrics by this electroacupuncture study test equipment on kidney and liver function. And then when they played PCM music, those metrics went down to the listener. Then when they played music with C-Wave, which is part of his Daniel Hertz electronics, those metrics went up. So what I did is I read the patent. I wanted to know a little bit more about this electroacupuncture testing method. I wanted to learn a lot more about how many people were done, and then did they vary that testing? And all of that I kind of address with questions directly to Mark Levinson in this Zoom. So you're going to want to watch the whole thing. It's pretty long. I will put chapters where I jump in because the first 30 minutes is mostly him talking. And I wanted to just hear from him. You can only get so much from reading a patent. I wanted to hear the backstory, get a total perspective on it. It doesn't mean anything that my questions are changed. And in fact, I have a whole video in my membership section where I went through with meticulous detail and analyzed what's in the patent. I didn't release that video because, and thanks to my members helped give me that advice, because it was much better to do this where we can interact. And that's the second reason I'm so proud of this video, is that I think it shows how the press and manufacturers should interact when they have questions. Yes, it would have been great for me to do a hit piece, drama, that would create lots of viewers, subscribers, all kinds of vanity metrics on my channel. And you've seen that in the hobby. People attack a legend. They'll do stuff against Andrew Jones. They'll do all kinds of things to create attention for them, or drama, or a negative review ends up getting the manufacturer mad and you got lawsuits and all this kind of stuff. I am proud of this because one of my members helped put me in touch with Mark Levinson. I didn't even have a relationship with him. And we got together, and to his credit, was totally open book. Super high integrity guy. I'm very pleased to say I can call him a friend and a guy, A+ guy. It doesn't mean I still agree with everything. And I think at the end of this video, you'll see where we come together on even things he may do differently in hindsight. And this is the kind of quality person you want to have as the behind your brand that you buy stuff from. Even if you don't agree with everything, there's a lot to learn from Mark Levinson here and how he reacts to tough questions, to my pushback. That is more important to me than even specifics in the patent. And as a whole, us getting together in this manner, I think is much better than doing drama and other kind of things that you see plentiful in YouTube, Facebook, all in industry and other industries as well. So what I did was let him talk mostly for the first 30 minutes because I wanted to digest from him. If you already know C-Wave and know his spiel on that, it may not be conducive to easy listening. You probably want to get to the part where I give him the tough questions. That's probably going to be closer to the 30-minute mark. What I'll do is I'll try to put chapters in where I jump in, and then you can decide whether the question I ask is something you already know about or not. And our interactions are probably what's going to be of value to many of you who don't really know, one side or the other, the questions and the answers. I want you guys to be able to watch this whole thing efficiently, and some things you may already know, some things you may not know. So I'll try to make it as easy as possible. But if you can watch the whole thing, I highly encourage it. I have such a high respect for Mark Levinson after this Zoom, and I think you will too. And spoiler alert, I got to visit him. I got videos coming in Italy. The M1 system in his home is among the best I've heard. I mean, it is super high-end reference quality on almost any metric you can imagine. Right up my alley. So again, spoiler alert on that, but you'll enjoy the content I share with you on that in the future. But enjoy this Zoom for now, and I'll see you back here soon. Definitely appreciate your indulgence here. It's been really music to my ears on everything. I did have some tough questions when it came to the patent and the health stuff.
Please ask.
That's where I think that's where I think you might get a little pushback, because when I started to look at the health side of things, I didn't really understand what was the test. What did the test entail? How many people? Could you just maybe it wasn't really clear, what was done to kind of determine the health benefit side of it?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, back in the day, we had no idea what this was going to turn into, right? I mean, it was just no idea what we were getting into. And there's different tests. One is a kind of a shortcut, and then there's more full testing, but they all correlate, they all track. And we just didn't keep track of it. We were just looking to see what's going on here and what are we going to do. But it wasn't about trying to prove anything at all in those days. So, but I can tell you that in the future, I would like to do a very controlled test using people who are very experienced at doing that kind of test. That's not my expertise. Now, there are people, I'm a music guy, but there are people who know how to do those highly controlled tests that you can publish in a journal of medicine. Now, I don't know how to do that, and I don't have the money to pay for it at the moment, but someday we'll do that. And it will work because we have tested hundreds and hundreds of people, and everybody tests the same. Sony said the test works because it was obvious to them that it did. And you'll understand, it's not snake oil. It's kind of a universal reaction. Why is the LP back? Why do some musicians still want to record an analog tape? Well, come on. The thing is, there's probably ways of measuring this that I don't know about. I'm not a doctor, but what we have so far is fairly conclusive because it's repeatable, consistent, documented with printouts. Now I just have that pilot test. That was the one that I had that's what I could use for the patent. But everybody tests the same. It's just the way it is. It's like gravity. The fact is it surprising? Probably. Will it shock people? Probably. But it's not my fault. I'm just a messenger. I'm not making anything up. I'm just saying, look what we found here. Oh, okay. And the interesting thing is that finally we have a way to test. We have a measurement like frequency response or distortion. We have a way of testing something. And it just shows up. It shows the presence of PCM processing every time. And there are probably other ways of testing. The problem is it has to be instant, non-invasive, silent. An MRI you can't use because it's noisy. A blood test is too slow. You have to come up with something. Well, the methodology we used has been correlated with blood tests and MRIs and other things. It's, there's documentation on that. It's not a joke. It's not what the AMA would use. America has a lobby called the AMA. You know what the AMA is? The American Medical Association.
Sure.
And in other countries, they have different systems. For example, in China, you go to a hospital, they give you acupuncture. That's what you get. Americans, they don't know what's that? They have no idea. So Americans like pharmaceuticals. They like drugs because the big drug companies push the drugs on everybody. So they're pharmaceutical based. And the test we were using is sort of not a traditional Western medical test, but it's used, of course, in America and Europe and other countries. That different companies are making such equipment now. There's one in Germany as well. The one I'm using is made in America by Veradigm. And it's real. I mean, it's one of the. Are you familiar with wellness at all? Anything to do with wellness? There are fields of therapy now which are different from just taking pharmaceuticals. And one of them is predictive. In other words, to try to keep people from getting sick.
Sure.
Western medicine, hey, sure. You go to an American drugstore, half of it sells the worst junk food in the world, and the other half sells the medicines that they prescribe for you once you get sick.
That's true. Right.
There are cultures that say, hey, the best is not to get sick in the first place. And so the kind of testing we're using, that EAB testing from Veradigm, that's a kind of test that's designed to see what direction you're going in, so that you can take care of your health and maybe not get sick. It's predictive.
Okay.
And it's all there's tons of documentation. I mean, look, that's not my company, not my business. Who am I? I'm a music guy. But that equipment is widely used. I think the kit is like $13,000. You have to be serious to get that stuff.
Now, are we talking about the avatar testing that's mentioned in the patent?
Avatar is the name of a product made by Veradigm Corporation.
Okay.
It's also made by other companies, one in Germany, and which are based on EAB testing. Yep.
Yeah, so it's kind of an energy medicine as far as
No. There's some videos. I'll send you some links. Look, it's not my field, but a German doctor by the name of Boll came up with a theory in the 1950s, but they didn't have computers at the time to implement it. But afterward they developed this testing, which is the idea is that the body in general is not a very good conductor of electricity, except at points which actually correspond to the acupuncture points. And the conductivity of the body at those points is different. And depending upon the health of a person, that conductivity will change. And that allows you to do certain kinds of analysis that are repeatable and consistent and measurable. Now, nobody ever thought about doing anything with audio that way, but the idea is to take a look at the organs of the body functioning. The basis, Chinese medicine is 5,000 years old. And the basis of Chinese medicine is that your organs need to be healthy. If they say, if your organs aren't healthy, you're in trouble, right? Heart, stomach, liver, kidney, and so forth. And so you want to be able to sort of check how you're doing in these different areas. And that's kind of what this kind of testing is for. By the way, it wasn't my idea. I had nothing to do with it. I just sort of like tripped over this and found that, hey, this really tracks the other testing really well. I mean, this is super cool that we can get the same results, but we can print it out. Boom, boom, boom. It's documentable. And that was, so, you know, that, I mean, this is really interesting to be able to do that. I never thought back in those days that it would turn into this situation we have today. That was not anything I anticipated. But you can look into, if you'd like to look into what Veradigm is doing and other companies are doing with EAB testing, you can take a look. It's very interesting stuff. What's interesting is that it corresponds 100% to what Sony said, which is that the test is valid. It works 100% of the time. That's why I was able to identify PCM processing in 33 of the 35 SACDs that they gave me. And many and hundreds more at other occasions too. So it's not chance.
So it was the same electroacupuncture type testing that you used back then?
I didn't use that particular test all the time, but they all track. If you're welcome to be as skeptical as you want, but I'll tell you, you will find in the end that there's no snake oil here. It's just the way it is. You know, and I know that digital audio is different from pure analog. Most people know that. But why? There has to be a reason. And if there is a reason, we need to be able to test it somehow. It can't be, there's no way to test it, then that's snake oil. We don't want well, you know, it's just, no, there has to be some way to test this stuff. And this does work. And Sony said it works too. So it all correlates. And that's the thing and it's pretty easy to understand when you think about it. What really is the difference between pure analog, DSD, which is also good, and PCM? Analog is a continuous waveform. DSD is 1 bit, which is pretty much like analog. And PCM is a non-continuous waveform. That's it. That's what there is. What else is there? That's it.
Well, I guess you get
so how do you
from the Nyquist theorem, and did Dick Berwin have to address that criticism?
Say that again.
The
What are you
Nyquist
referring
theorem,
to?
you know, the Nyquist theorem and the fact that the step nature of the digital is not really perceivable as a difference. I know you're arguing otherwise, but
it's not that I'm arguing. I have nothing to say about this. I'm just showing something we measured every time. I have no opinion. Who am I? I'm not qualified to have opinions on these things. I just am presenting measurements that are repeatable. They happen every time. They're consistent. I'm just the messenger. Don't shoot me.
Right. I guess the question was in your patent, you have specific tables mentioning the amount of reverb added at certain points. You know, I guess somebody had to figure that out to a level of consistency that would address a problem consistently in this area. So there's some established stuff that PCM is not harmful to your health in general respect.
Wait. Well, first of all, no, I'm not saying PCM is bad for your health. What I'm saying is PCM seems to create a stress response, a consistent, repeatable stress response in the human brain, because that's what the test shows. Now, what does that mean? Well, I don't know. That you'd have to study that. And this, well, what happens? What does that mean? That particular kind of stress response, and you'd have to look at that carefully. That's a whole other thing. I'm just showing that these tests will 100% of the time reveal PCM processing, which appears as a stress response. Now, what we know about stress, and again here, please don't again, I'm a musician, recording engineer, audio equipment designer. I'm not a doctor or a medical expert at all. I'm just presenting some findings. And what we know, okay, let me put it another way. What doctors say is that stress has two effects that are relevant here. One is that stress stops emotion. That's why people say digital is cold, digital is analytical, analog is warm, right? Millions of people have said the same thing. Why? Well, maybe has something to do with the fact that that stress response tends to stop emotion, so you don't get lost in the music like we used to. You know that. We used to get, I don't know, maybe you're too young. When I was listening to LPs as a kid, we just listened for hours and hours and hours and hours and never get tired. Right. Now what happens? You listen, turn it up. It's not the same. I mean, pure analog can just listen to forever. Recording engineers say they used to work 14 hours straight with pure analog, but now after 2 or 3 hours with digital, they get burned out. Well, this is stories go on and on and on. I'm not telling you anything new, but that listening fatigue, where does it come from? That's all. It's nothing magical here. It's everybody knows this, the truth. And the other one is that stress lowers the immune system. Now, that's not a good thing. But what does it really mean in terms of audio? That has to be studied. My job is not to study that. That's not my business. I'm just showing you what we found, and you decide for yourself if it's important, it's not important. But this deserves study, and it's just the beginning of something. But at least, we have developed a way to start to get our arms around what's going on here. Because until this, there was nothing except I like this, I like that, that's okay, that's not okay, people's opinions, but there was nothing more than that. This is the first attempt to try to have meaningful measurements that will help us to make things better. Just like frequency response is a test. Harmonic distortion is a test. There's many, many different audio tests that help us make our amplifiers or speakers better, right? That we just use these tests as normal. And this is just another test that we can develop and turn into something. Look, in the early days of audio, plus or minus 3 dB was considered flat, right? Mm-hmm. Flat. Plus or minus 3 dB was flat. Today, you can measure 1/10 of a dB, right?
Much
okay,
better now.
Well, things have changed. In the early days, 1% distortion was considered acceptable. Then 0.1, then 0.01, then 0.001, and now 0.000 is fine. But, you know, it developed over time. So we're just talking about developing measurements. And is it all finalized? No, but it's a start. And it shows that there's something here because it's consistent, repeatable, and documentable. That's the beginning of something.
Okay, well, that makes a little more sense. I just wanted to give you my frank feedback because, yeah, I can only go by what is in the patent. And if that was just a pilot study and not detailed.
It said pilot. It just said pilot. It's just a pilot study. Look, first of all, I think it's real important that we have this conversation, get to know each other. And you see that we're both interested in, we have similar values, similar priorities. But because audio is 50% engineering, we need to be able to get our arms around issues with measurements as well as, you know, subjective comments like I like this or you like that. And what we're trying, this is all about an attempt to understand things better so we can make things better. And nobody ever thought about it. So the patent is basically to establish this. And also, I spent 30 years of my life and millions of dollars to do this. And if I can protect it to some extent, maybe I'll get my money back someday. That would be cool. I'm not rich enough to be a philanthropist. And
Yeah.
but it's not to say that the idea of the measurements is not to say everybody is bad or negative. It's not about that. It's just hey, let's make things better. We have an opportunity to make things better. If music reproduction creates this effect, that's not a good thing. Let's make that effect go away. Maybe somebody else will come up with a better way of doing it. I don't know, but at least we have something to look at. Doesn't that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to outline basically how I came at it, looking at everything was great. Like I said, same page and like the direction. It's just sometimes when you get into start talking about health benefits or health detriments to certain things, that's when actual FTC and other kind of regulatory bodies start getting a little more worried about. It's not like measuring harmonic distortion on an amp improperly. When you start talking about health benefits, there's a new threshold that becomes important.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. And now you've touched the point. There were two schools. One school said to me, don't touch it. Don't mention it. Don't bring it up. It's too controversial. You'll get people jumping down your throat, attacking you, tearing you apart, and don't go near it. And the other school said, look, if it's the truth, just share it. The truth is always good. If people don't get it, maybe they'll get it later. They'll learn to understand it. But if it's real, it's real. And then just, let the chips fall where they may. And I really, it's a tough call. But in the end, I think truth wins. It's good to share this stuff. And as long as it creates progress and gives us a way to make things better, it's okay. I'll take the flack. If I weren't confident that this was real, I wouldn't say these things. But I'm not making specific claims because we have not done that level of testing. But the general, the general discussion will now change because we're connecting the digital audio problem to something that can be consistently tested in some way, at least its starting point. And that's good. It's better than nothing. Like pure DSD tests like analog. Only PCM tests like this. That's interesting. And 32-bit floating point 384K PCM tests the same way as MP3. That's interesting. I mean, these are just measurements. It's not me making any kind of a claim. These are just tests and observations that people can look at, and we'll see what comes out of the whole thing. But what we don't want is stress. There's too much stress in the world anyway. Music is supposed to be healing, uplifting. It's supposed to transport you. It's supposed to do something for you, not make you stressed. And the stress response is something it's hard to argue with. Same reason that Sony validated my work and said, you're right. I would hope that people would just say, hey, this is interesting. Let's take a look and see what's really going on. It deserves more testing, evaluation, whatever, that's okay. But again, if we want to go back to what we feel listening to great musicians play in person, then obviously stress is not a good thing to have in the technology. That's all. But it doesn't mean that everything is bad. It just means, hey, we can do something better. I mean, what's interesting to me is that well, can I put it away? I'm just one person, you know, with a very small company, and I need all the help I can get. And what I'm bringing to the table here is something that is the beginning of some kind of understanding and maybe other solutions, but it needs to be developed. And I hope my work will be helpful in some way.
No, I mean, everything in this product is music to my ears, and the direction that this industry could go into, and kind of evidences your, again, Steve Jobs type iconic visionary in the hobby. But, you know, just quite honestly, when I read the part of the health benefits and kidney and liver using electrotherapy, acupuncture, that's where I couldn't get sold on that. And I'm open to hearing
Okay,
more.
that's understandable. That's completely understandable. One thing you need to know is that these EAV systems require people who are trained, super trained people. It's not just something you toss around like bubblegum. I mean, you need really trained people to do these tests and to interpret them. This is a big deal. This is not just it's not a game. There was a doctor in Canada who tested 50 people, but he didn't document anything, unfortunately. And then he got very ill. I don't know how he's doing now, but he got the same results. And can I say this? Sometime, first of all, my brother gives me more flack than you ever will. He is absolutely a skeptic. He's a retired professor of psychiatry from Stanford University. And he is hardcore skeptic. Boy, you'd have to work pretty hard to give me the flack he gives me about all this stuff. But I had to stick my neck out anyway. But you're absolutely right. It's easy to draw conclusions from reading the patent that are not what was intended. For example, okay, people show a stress reaction to PCM. What does that mean? What kind of stress? What effect does it have? Does it do anything harmful? Yes, no, is it whatever? What does it really mean? That's not studied. That's just showing a direction. But I think it correlates with the subjective, the human experience, that all around the world, people know that pure analog is different from digital, and people love pure analog LPs, and they don't love their CDs. They never did, right? I mean, there's just a whole emotional connection with pure analog that you don't get from CDs or digital. Why? Now, if you come to my home, and I beg you to come, I'm listening to, when I first listened to Qobuz through my M1 system here with the Maria 800, when I first, just a couple months ago, I started listening to Qobuz, and so it hit me. I said, I know this. What is this? There's something I know. And I realized this is the sound of my 30 Ips tapes. This is what I love. This is what I fell in love with in the beginning. Not LP, open reel tape. That was my real love. And here we go. I said, this is sick. This is far out. Qobuz, I can stream from Qobuz and it feels like this. That really impressed me. Do you know David Solomon of Qobuz? Mm-hmm. He has a Maria at home. Ask him if he likes it. I just mean to say, in some way, the audio world has been living in denial. Sony told us in 1978 that the CD was perfect, right? That was their claim. The CD is perfect. Hello. Is that true? No. But that's what we got sold on. The CD is perfect. Get rid of the LP. The LP is dead. Throw out your master tapes. Digital is the answer. PCM is perfect. Well, sorry, guys. And it's one thing to have an opinion. Well, I like pure analog better. No, I think digital is good enough. Well, I think this, I think that. It's another thing to say, Jesus, every time we test somebody, they test like this. That's just another, it's another thing to think about. And it means something. And if you look at it, is it fully defined? No. But what the avatar testing is saying would be best interpreted by somebody who's really trained in using that. That was maybe my mistake. Maybe I should have asked somebody who was really trained in that kind of testing to write the explanation of how it works, so that it was coming from somebody with a background in it. Maybe I didn't do that right.
Yeah, I think so, because you're going to get pushed back more than me, as you noted with your brother, that it just doesn't. It's not going to pass the test, like you talked about, a peer-reviewed, thorough test to be able to make claims that get into the health realm. We're used to in this hobby claims about subjective and some things with measurements, but that's
Right.
where I got concerned from the standpoint of just general reasonable argument that I couldn't see where a lot of people were tested. I couldn't see where kidney and liver is really correlated to stress. I couldn't really see a lot of things that I don't want to get into the weeds on, because it basically is a pilot test, but something that you may want to address, because the pushback's not
You're
going to
right.
come from me. It's
You're
going to
right.
come from a lot
You're
of
right.
people if they read the patents. A lot of people, I think, should just look at the merits of your equipment, listen to it, and see that you're doing some innovative stuff, regardless of the health impact, and be totally happy with it. I probably would have counseled you to do the same. But in any case, if you do want to pursue the path of health claims, I do think it is going to be important to have some more peer-reviewed stuff. We can say that there's things wrong with big pharma, AMA, and stuff, but that doesn't mean avatar electroacupuncture gives 100% proof. We can acknowledge a problem,
Absolutely.
but we
You're
need
right.
to
No,
also,
you're absolutely,
and that's what
you're
I'm
right.
trying to get across. I'm just giving you my frank, honest
No, you're,
feedback,
and I agree with you.
not
I agree with you.
blowing
I
any
agree with
smoke.
you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I just think that if you step back and you look at how people really feel about listening to CDs and digital audio, and you really just step back, you see that there's something wrong with it. It's not the same. It's not just sonic. There's something deeper. That's why recording and mastering engineers get headaches. That's why people turn it off. They don't. Let me ask you a question. Would you listen to a recording of a solo violinist of 1 hour long on a CD?
Well, I guess, you know,
Yeah, nobody says yes.
I mean, I'm
People go,
talking
no,
about the
thanks.
taste of the music is part of the equation. I mean, it's
Well,
two
that's true. Well,
violinist
but you know
versus
what?
CD. It's kind of two things you're asking me there.
No,
Um,
well,
yeah.
what I mean, all I mean to say is, people used to listen to classical music for hours on end with LPs, operas, string quartets, solo violin, cello, all kind of things, hours on end. And today people listen and turn it off, listen a little bit, turn it off. It's just, it's epidemic. It's not the same. We don't get lost in the music like we did with analog. And that's the question is, why not? I really think this is a key issue here, that, you know, people used to wear out their records playing them over and over and over again. I did. It was a whole thing. It just changed. And I mean,
Well,
I'm
people
not
used to play
saying
instruments before. You could probably even see it now. Kids are now playing sports or video games where they used to play instruments. It was a different
that's
time.
true.
We listened
Yep,
to music all that time because we didn't have video games or phones
that's
and other
true.
things. What we have now,
That's true.
we're ADHD. So there's other variables I think that you have to
Right, right, right,
acknowledge
right. They're
are
right.
part of the
That's
equation.
true. Well,
And
that's true.
you see it with musical instruments. PCM, for all its faults in terms of the anecdotal stuff you're talking about, is basically 99% of what's out there. Every audiophile today that's going to listen to music, 99% of it, even if they've got an analog rig, they're not going to use it. So to go too overboard
You're
with
right.
PCM
Yes,
is,
you're
I
right.
think,
You're right.
a problem
But
because
you're
it opens you to controversy because that's what it's already been solved. PCM is going to be, here. And so I think it's admirable
well,
you're trying to fix it and make it better with all the things you're doing. But yeah,
but
PCM
you
is probably here
how
to
do you
stay.
but how do you fix it if you can't measure it?
Well, I mean, you're saying you fixed it, but you had to measure it to come up with these amounts of reverb to add.
What I'm saying is, what the test shows is people are in a room listening to nothing. Same room, same time, say everything. 4 people, they're in this and they're sitting there, and we test them one after the other. And they test, that's their baseline, no music at all. Then they're listening to digital, same song, same volume, same playback, everything the same. And they all test considerably worse than with no music. Then we play the same track, same volume, same everything, same conditions with C-wave processing, and they all test way better than they did with no music.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. What that means is listening to music makes you stronger than, or something positive regarding, with and without. So that's the delta right there. That's the interesting thing. We want music to be uplifting, to be healing, to be healthy. We don't want it to be a negative. We want it to be a positive. And what the test shows is that with C-wave processing, it's a positive. Without it, it's a negative. That's the important thing. That's all it shows. Everything else doesn't care. It doesn't matter. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If you can prove that, consistently and appear.
That's exactly why I felt I had to include it, because that's what it shows.
Well,
That's it. Everything else doesn't matter. Everything else doesn't matter. Here you are with no music.
right.
With PCM, you're there. With C-wave process, you're here. That's all. And that's consistent. And that's it. It's not 4 people, it's hundreds of people. It's just we didn't document everything. But this is exactly why I felt that I had to go on the line, because it was that important. But I do agree with you that I put myself in
Well, I mean,
I became a target.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the test was not clear to me. Like if you have no music and then you expose people to music, especially if it's a song they'd never heard, and then they hear it again a second time, even with nothing changing, your brother, who's a psychiatrist, will talk about the commonality bias. That second time you hear it, you will have less stress because it's not new to you. So if you do a test that's always in that order, you'd have to vary that order over hundreds of people, and I just didn't see that level.
And you're right, and that's what I didn't do, but I couldn't. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the resources at all. I did the best I could, but I'm telling you,
Okay, fair
it
enough. I
will.
don't want to beat you up. I'm
It will.
just talking, giving you honest
No, but
feedback of
no, and
what
I agree with
somebody
you. No, I
like
thank
me,
you.
who's very analytical, is going to.
But you're
Other
right.
people are going to
But
be
you're right.
more critical than me
You're right.
and beat you up on that part when I don't think that they
You're right.
missed the good parts that you're doing here up to that
Yeah, yeah.
point are all positives. So that's
But
just
you're
my
right, and you're
feedback.
right. You are right. You are right on that. I wish I could have done more. I can only tell you that it just about bankrupted me to get this far. It was a much bigger thing than I ever could have imagined undertaking. The whole thing, it was just, I mean, I don't know how I got this far, but
It looks
I've
like
done
you're
my
happy
best.
at the end, you're happy with the product and people are happy with it, and that's the key part.
Well, that's true. However, if a book is ever written about this, you'll never believe what it took to get this far. And your feelings are completely understandable. You're absolutely right. I wish I could have done better in a lot of things in my life. I've made more mistakes than most people ever will.
That's how we all learn.
And Well, and I would do a lot of things differently if I could do them over again. But my commitment to music and to integrity is there anyway. And um, time will tell.
Well, yeah, you
But I
certainly
can
have
tell
nothing
you
to
that,
apologize in terms of your impact on the industry, the iconic products, and the influence you've had, and the joy you've brought to many people with your products. So I think that yeah, we all make mistakes, but this is relatively not even more of a mistake. It's just I needed clarification, and also just to give you honest feedback of maybe what you can be anticipating from people more critical than myself, because I love everything that you're doing otherwise that I read in the patent, and you're using technology and synergy and bringing the best elements of pro audio, active crossovers, just everything is
right,
exactly
right.
where this industry should be going. You're going to get pushback from dealers, like you talked about, because it's going to cannibalize their business. But you're doing something at your own risk. You talked about even going bankrupt for it, but you believe in it. And that's the kind of people I like to feature and kind of passion I like. But I have to be
Thank
honest
you.
when I have to find other things that I want to be frank with you about that probably needed a little
Sure.
more.
You're right. No, I thank you for that. Um, I will say, just on a personal note, that if it weren't for C-Wave, I would not be in audio. I really can't listen to normal PCM digital. I just can't. I just I can't do it. It's just I find it unlistenable. It just bothers me. And there are a lot of people who feel the same way as I do. And so for me personally, it was essential to be able to develop that and do the whole Mighty Cat chip thing and like otherwise I just think I really would get out of audio. So for me personally, it was a game changer. But I agree that I'm maybe bit off more than I could chew, that I didn't have the money and the resources to do all the proofs and documentation in the right way, all the things you mentioned. You're absolutely right. Um, Someday they will be done, and I'm sure that they will
Irrespective
substantiate
of
what I've
those
talked about.
things, it's a product that nobody else has ever used those metrics anyway to sell the product. So I don't think it's even necessary. It probably just opens you up to more criticism than benefit, because I think on its own merits, it's doing well in terms of what really matters. People are enjoying the product. So what I'd like to do is coordinate. I'm excited to hear and see you in person, see your place, and meet you in person. And I'd love to do that, coordinate hearing this and telling people just how great it is. So
Thank you.
we'll definitely have to
And
follow
you're
up.
you're right in that normally I don't even talk about C-Wave. People they might come and listen, and that's just they listen. Okay. They have their reaction, but I'm not talking about C-Wave at all. We just put on some music and listen. And then people will say things like, there's no digital sound at all. Oh, thank you. You know, this is like analog tape. Oh, thank you. This
Well,
is speaks
especially if
for
you get
so
the wife.
I'm not my goal with C-Wave wasn't to use to sell things. It's more like I just want to make the best products that I can, but also I need to honor what Dick Berwin taught me, which is 50% engineering, 50% art. And engineering to me has something to do with measurements. And of course, if I didn't, I mean, I'm a subjective person like you are, of course, but like, I'll give you an example. When we're developing a speaker, of course, we're going to listen, but we're also going to measure it. And if it's 2 dB down somewhere, whoops, do we want that? I don't know. And, it's sort of like just, we want to know what we're doing. And until now, there has been really no way of getting your arms around the PCM problem because there was simply no way to detect it. There was no measurement. There was no nothing. It was just, nobody, even Sony, David Kawakami reported to the president of Sony in Japan, head of DSD for Sony. And he said to me, we don't know how to test this at Sony. We don't know. You're doing something that we don't know how to do. That was a long time ago. So, but you're right. And maybe history will punish me for being too far out front there, and people will beat me up for it. And
Well, I
maybe
think
they should.
anybody that's innovator is going to have haters and stuff. But like I mentioned, I think you don't have anything to apologize for. You're an icon in the industry, and the product, it stands on its own. I'm just glad and appreciative that you also had the wherewithal to come in front here honestly, face my questions. We didn't pre-plan any of this, but I didn't want this to be another just softball type one when it didn't fit my belief system and what I had seen. So I appreciate you taking the tough questions, answering them honestly, and figuring where you might go in the future with that level of testing. But really, on its own merits, everything I hear from normal product is something I definitely am interested in listening to. So number one, appreciate you taking the time, and number two, definitely want to schedule while I'm in Italy, maybe coming by.
If you need help with hotels or being picked up and brought back somewhere, I can help you with that. All you need, if you have half an hour,
Okay.
30, whole thing wouldn't take very long. If you have even this much time, I really appreciate your kind words. I would only say that given what you've told me about yourself, I think it would be really worth it to come and hear the M1 system if you could. It's right in back of me here. I would really be grateful if you could. I'll understand if you can't. Yeah, I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours about things and keep going, but I know that your time is limited, and I don't want to take much more of your time. But I'm really happy to answer any questions. And by the way, let me say that I'm grateful to Dick Berwin, one of the 4 founding fathers of analog devices. If you don't know that, for being my mentor all these years. And I'm also very grateful to Dr. Diamond, who was a passionate music lover and believed that music was perhaps the greatest therapy. And his lifelong commitment was to helping people who needed help that no one else could help. And he was an amazing visionary. And I guess I'm trying to honor the musical integrity part, but I'm also trying to honor what I think is the truth. And hopefully in the future I'll have more resources to do this, go further. By the way, maybe somebody else will come up with a better solution. That's okay, whatever works. I mean,
I don't think anybody else wants to make their own chip like you are, become a tech company. That's you deserve a lot of kudos for that investment alone. No, I can't think of anybody else that would want to do that.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. Well, I've been blessed to have some very talented people around me. And with Daniel Hertz, like Skip Taylor and Mike O'Neill and others, I mean, Daniel Hertz is the sum of a lot of work from talented people. And I don't want to make it look like it's my work. I'm here to put it together, but there's a lot of passion and dedication and talent here from other people, and I'd be happy to tell you more about that if you ever want to know. But I think if you had the opportunity to hear the M1, that would be a good step.
I think that's the next step. And then I'm so impressed by you now getting to know you. I was obviously a fan from afar, but now that I've gotten the chance to know you, how frank you are, honest you are, and how visionary you are, I think you sell yourself short in terms of, yes, you're blessed to have these relationships, but a lot of it is because of you. And your ability to recognize these kind of people and relate and put these kind of teams together that have been so successful and been brought so many great seminal products to this industry where there's thousands that don't. And your name is just synonymous with the industry, an icon. I'm very privileged to talk to you today. Can't wait to meet you and hear your system. And definitely in the future, have more of these talks or whatever you want to share anytime. This was a great Zoom. I loved it.
Thank you.